when I transferred into the heart of the teacher, and then from there I started to hear these words, and then from this, the firstly was, I have surely bestowed my. It said, I have surely bestowed my great blessings upon all the participants of the retreat. So much so they're even seeing and accessing what they would normally never ever see. And then some guidance from Sayyidina Abdul Aziz Dabagh. He said, all the participants could stand in prayer and make shukr all day and night, but will never ever truly justify the thankfulness for what they have. Just as easily the Muhammadan light has been bestowed upon them, similarly it will be taken away. The only way to do true shukr upon what the participants are being taught is by following the teacher with full submission and obedience, developing and being steadfast upon the prescribed a'mals given to them, and by the remaining connected to the mashayikh at all time as much as one can. And furthermore, the mashayikh and the ustads raised their hands. Furthermore, they made dua for all the participants, requesting help from Allah Azza wa Jal to assist all on this path. The angels responded, Ameen, and a light, very powerful, orbited the whole world and descended back to the heavens, whereby you could hear Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam even saying Ameen to this dua. And then the light of and then the dua of our mashayikh traveling on this light, inshallah.
So really, in reality in this life, something when it's present, available, like it's present here, for example, the air, we don't really appreciate. But soon as something becomes less available, something rare to be found, then the value in our eyes goes up. For people who are here for the first time, for them it's amazing. But what happens is we should have that, thinking that such a blessing that we're receiving, that like the brother was saying yesterday, that you can only read in the books of old, that these experiences the awliya and the mashayikh used to have, to the point where nowadays people even who believe in tasawwuf, believe in path of Sufism and spirituality, even they're having doubts. They're actually experts in the field of tasawwuf. They've learned the theoretical knowledge, but they're having doubts. Does it actually really happen in this day and age? So number one, we should cherish, and this is the advice that you received, which is quite self-explanatory, in a sense that, if you were to stand in the rows and do shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night in salah, still it won't be sufficient. The blessing that we're receiving, especially here in the spiritual gathering, it would outweigh how much we can give thanks to. And it is true that, like we were discussing yesterday, that only through the submission of the teacher where the whole world opens up. It's the same analogy we gave, that in order for you to become to acquire or achieve PhD and become expert in the field, you have to submit to your supervisor and people who are actually leading your way. If, however, halfway you decide, now I don't want to continue, I want to stop, then you won't complete your PhD, and then still there's a shortcomings, there's still a gap, there's still a missing part in your life. So that's why this following the instruction of the teacher, like yesterday we had a very beautiful, I don't know you have heard this, but for me it's as though I've heard the first time, and it struck me in my heart when he said, what did they say? That why is it that we have to love Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And that is normally sufficient, but have you ever heard the wisdom why this is so? Because in one sense, if let's say a non-believer hears this, na'uzubillah, I'm not saying obviously we do it, no, they could pose a question, well, isn't it be agreed that he wants everyone's love more than our own self? But that has been answered, even if that shaitan puts a thought in your mind, That if you ever think, oh, why do you have to submit everything, to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and so on? Why? Is because in essence it is not for himself. He doesn't need this. Because why? Because he's got love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah declared he is my beloved. So why does one the love of the creation? Because creation is made from nothing. It can go back to nothing as well. Made from dust, go back to dust. So really, why? Because by you having this love, which is a very powerful emotion, people who study psychology, they know, amongst many, you could say, the emotive and motivational forces we have, pain and pleasure is two. People work, they study, they get a good house. Why? Because they want to enjoy the pleasure aspect. If you have a good salary, you can get good car, good house, you can pay for bills, life is comfortable. If you don't get a good job, if you don't have a good house, what it is, there's a danger you will suffer some kind of pain. So to avoid pain and to have the enjoyment, our whole life is revolving around dunya and so on. But even higher than that, higher emotional and motivational aspect is love. If someone really falls in love in something, then nothing can deter that person. He goes after that or she goes after that. So that's why this motivation, this emotion is used, so that our concentration of focus is upon that person. And so that you will follow him then, his instructions, his sunnah. And so that, guess what? We will the one will benefit, not him. If he follow or not, just if you peel it, talking from the personal point of view, if he follow or not, Rasulullah has done his mission. Allah Ta'ala already favored him. He's already the best of creation. He's already beloved. There's no shortcomings from his side if you don't follow him. So it's purely for our own benefit. Likewise, at a Lord level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not deprived in every one iota, one atom, if you don't worship him, if you rebel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need our worship, doesn't need our service. He says in the Quran, in the verse, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Then after that, read the verse. It's actually for our benefit. It's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't need so. So on that basis, then we should really understand what the teacher are saying, and the submission and what we're receiving is for our own good and benefit. People who are here first time, for example, before you come first time, the teacher will teaching all around the world, like in Malaysia, like I said, in the Middle East and here. And people who have benefited, they have benefited. People who haven't, they are the one deprived. The teacher is still carrying on with their mission. They're still being blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So why do they lose out if you don't submit? Think about the same principle now. If we don't submit, we have our own inhibitions, our own thinking, my own sheikh, I'm thinking which one shall I go for? In one sense, if I say in my a local language, why do they care? Why does he care if you submit or not? Because he's getting a paycheck already from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're the one, I'm the one going to lose out here if you don't follow the instructions and submit. But the awliya and the anbiyas are so compassionate. When they see we're deprived or we're not achieving or reaching what we should be to our potential, they feel for it. They feel saddened. They feel mercy. They feel compassion. And they go extra mile to make us understand. Now look, this is key to your own benefit. So that's why, like mashallah, Brother Abid was saying, this submission of the teacher and what you're going to get after is the key here, inshallah. And then many doors will open up and many, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, inshallah. Next person. Thank you, Jazakallah. Especially I'd like to, yes please, of course. And also those who are maybe participating for the first time, I want to hear from you, as well as if there's any difficulties you experience. Ji. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
So during the initial zikr and preparation amal, my body began to feel light. I tried to imagine the lataif being cleansed by the light coming from Allah's name. I couldn't visualize any colors or anything, but I just tried to continue with imagination. And throughout the lataif, I could see just like blobs of light floating around, bluish, whitish color.
What did the colours showing? Do you actually showing the colours what you meant to show, or was something else while you were doing one colour?
No, I wouldn't see any particular colour. Like for the
No, so you were saying the blobs.
yeah.
Was it in reference to the practice you were doing
No.
of that, or something else?
It just looks like floating around.
Okay.
It's throughout the whole Lataif
Okay.
process. I could feel more activity and cleansing, particularly on the lower Lataif, and also on the forehead one, and I could feel it a bit tight as well, tightening up. And then at some Lataif, I felt like I dozed off for a little bit, and I could see like different scenarios, different occurrences, which I don't remember all of them, but one that I do remember particularly was I remember seeing someone like they had no beard, and I felt like I was seeing them in their grave, and I said to them that, "Are you happy now? Are you blissful?" I said that, something like that.
And what was the kind of response?
There was no response.
Someone that you know, this person?
No, don't know them. And yeah, then that was just, then I woke up again.
That person was in a bad state, good state, or?
No, he
can't
looked
help?
like he was happy, like in a good state now.
Okay.
And then at the transfer, I struggled to picture my outline, but I just blew the breath and continued anyway. And then after, when went to fairs and things, I could just see glimpses of Hazrat Saab's face, and then I think I saw one glimpse of them smiling as well. And that was it, pretty much.
So is this your first experience, or what? You got it before?
Done the sessions before,
Okay.
but yeah.
This experience was your first?
This retreat is the first like collective retreat
Right.
in this sense.
These, I think some people are naturally inquiring as well. You know, these latifas, the 7 that we focus, there's actually more as well. There's actually on the side as well. But they're like the minor ones. So what we focus on those 7, they're like the major. So it's like M6. And then you ask me, oh, where was A34? Because I used that road to go London. I said, no, M6 is a bigger one. It takes you direct. It's a faster one. Other ones do exist, but we only focus on M6 because you want to go to your destination, which is London. Doesn't matter if it's A34 or A35. Why does it matter to you? Let's follow M6, M1, and go to London. So these are like the major, you could say, like the motorways, like, you know, charging your spiritual transfer. And there are others, for example, Naqshbandi, they follow like for the, Kalbi and Syria and so on. But they're actually, you might know about 7 and 4, 11. There's actually 21 or 26 or 50. There's actually quite a lot, maybe hundreds of Latifah. So we know aware of all of it as well. And here we don't really focus, because for one, it would confuse people unnecessarily, and number 2, it's not really the purpose of it. Purpose is to cleanse the major ones, and that'll support the minor ones anyway. And then our purpose is to spiritually charge our spirit, our ruh, and transfer. So like I said yesterday, these are you could say the sciences of light. For example, those who know a little bit of science as well, you know that they discovered that there's something called antimatter. By the word itself, something exists but doesn't exist. Now it's a confusing concept, a grey matter or antimatter. They said that 95% of the universe is covered by antimatter. The matter is your basic constitution of your life, like what we exist as forms. That's all matter. But they're saying that's only 5%, 10% of it. So how can you explain antimatter? It's only discovering some theories coming about now, although they can't fully, experientially or experimentally, they can't prove there is antimatter. It's just a concept, you could say. So like this, many things existing, spiritual light, these latifas and so on. It may be 500 years later, they might discover something about latifa. But it'll be too late for us then. We'll be gone by then, So that's why we just focus on 7, and there are more, inshallah. Maybe in the future, this will be mentioned to you as well. Now, the purpose of me saying all this is, all this latifa have a meaning. We don't want to go into too much detail because, again, we don't want to confuse you. Keep it very simple, because the purpose is to see and taste now. It's like, for example, we have a screen here. The media team has set it up. What's the purpose for? Just to see, the visually what's been presented. Now, if like, for example, you're like a technical mind. I want to know how it works. Okay, let's go. We'll enroll in a college. You'll learn about how the projector works and the science behind it and the reflection of light and so on. But not everyone is interested in science behind it. You're that type, so you can cater for that. So what's really happening is these latifas, they actually think of it as a very sharp or very pure, clean reflectors that reflects your life, your deeds, your amals that you do in the 24 hours, in the week, in the month. And what's happening is, as you purify them, then many things gets highlighted. Maybe you have got certain habits, certain, mistakes you do. So the different latifa represent different kind of actions of a person as well. So if someone, generally I'm speaking, not anyone obviously, in public, and obviously we cater for one-to-one as well. You can discuss private matters as well. So there's actually, we talked about remember blockages yesterday. We've not gone through the presentation. We will do at a later stage. The 7 major ones we said, the summary of them. But specifically, maybe certain blockages only applies to you, to that person who actually, that's his weakness or that's her weakness, for example. So they get highlighted in those latifas as well. So the lower one, generally speaking, just for your understanding, it refers to your own, for example, the kind of like the basal desires, the shahwa and so on, and the need for nafs and the egoistic stuff, which is the base. And the top ones have a different meaning as well. So when these things happen, like you said, latifa, it's a good sign that whatever you're practicing is working. That's why these are getting highlighted as well. And sometimes it's so obvious, you can directly relate to the tongue, the 7 organ sheet as well. Oh yeah, that refers to that because I'm doing that mistake. So it's reflecting here. That's why, as you can see, the purification cause is side by side. Like the 5 amas we saw yesterday are so important key that they actually complement and support each other as well. So that's what's happening. And in yourself, you're getting used to the whole process again. Maybe there's a break and so on. And so that's why your spirit kind of, not understanding what's really going on. It's like a baby, kind of makes sense of it. And even after transfer, by the blessing of Mashiach, you have transferred, but you can only recognize Hazrat because he's been, for a while. But you can't make out anything out of the scene. It's like someone who is blind, who had some issue, and he had his cataract removed. For the first time, you shine a light. For him, it's maybe difficult or overwhelming to actually understand everything what's going on. It'll be like a big blob of light, and it's like blinding that person. Until later on, slowly in time, that he gets better and then he understands, different things, and the resolution gets better. Before, there's a light but no resolution, for example. So inshallah, if you practice more and more, you'll be on the course to actually fully focusing and going to the journey, inshallah. Maybe one more. I think the food is here as well. Everyone's looking across as well. Yeah, sure. 10 minutes? Okay. Yeah, sure, please. Sorry, I didn't ask your name, brother.
Shahid.
Shahid? MashaAllah.
Well, I actually thank God that I'm with the pious people who are having experiences. For me, actually, I was heedless until we actually went to the route, and actually then I imagined Prophet.
You are what, heedless, did you say?
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Were you tired?
When we started, when we started with, so after the, so you have Astaghfirullah and then the Bismillah, Astaghfirullah, and when we went to the route, and
yes.
I thought, I should be paying more attention actually with that. Okay. So then I obviously focused on the Prophet's green dome and then have some attention there. During this time, just before when we went to the Latifa, this red Latifa.
The red one?
Yeah, around that time this leg started hurting. And I kept on until I went to this orange Latifa, and I have to change it, I have to move it. For the red Latifa, actually, it was hard for me to imagine actually the bright red color. So it was, my color was pinkish orange, kind of a mixture of that color. I can imagine other colors as such, but eventually after the golden breath, before that actually, I could not disappear my body.
Okay. So
I could not make it up, although I can see Sheikh Ahmad. I can see him. I can imagine him at least. When you said he is with me.
So one thing, sorry, if I may ask, from now on, do not worry about imagining, because remember, as Haji Gulfam explained in the presentation, that is part of the spiritual process, beginnings of. So when you say an imagination, it's almost I feel as though you kind of sidelining that. Oh, that's just imagination. That's nothing. I'm saying that is part of something greater.
Okay.
Only thing is, you're getting access, because up till now, maybe you're in your 30s, whatever, up till now, the whole of that experience you never experienced before. So like that, I can give an example of the blind who starts to see. He doesn't know what the pillar is, what this green color is, or whatever. It just, for him, it's too much light. Now he could say, oh, I don't believe in anything. I don't believe in this pillar, nothing, because I can't see. See, so slowly in time will come, inshallah.
So then when you said, the Shaykh is cursing somebody, so you are like kids and cursing somebody's hair. I imagine myself having that. But if I was having any difficulty further, so actually then I imagined that I'm actually getting bigger and bigger, and I just came to my own size. And then before we go into a journey, I was trying to rock it off with Shaykh, but you were actually slowing down, so I just like stayed there and eventually I imagine the Fez Shaykh Abdulaziz the box Tom, but and I can actually after your description, before your description, actually I was actually seeing a relatively taller person, not seeing, but again
a little bit what person?
Imagining a taller person and one of these face of one of the participants, that kind of face, and the.
Do you know who that is?
Iqbal.
Okay, you can tell me later, inshallah.
So yeah, but I kept on asking. Obviously, I did not hear anything, and.
Okay, there's few things that obviously, because remember I said it was a dummy run, first time ever you've done it. Have you done it before or first time? So for first time, to describe what you have described so far, that is an achievement. Imagine that, 20 hours ago, so not even 24 hours yet, 18 hours ago, you had no idea what's this. And in 18 hours, we didn't do much. We slept, we ate, we listened to speeches. So we only did about 1 hour worth of practice. And 1 hour, what you have achieved, whatever you explained thus so far, imagine maybe people out there for years and years cannot explain this. So that is you have to appreciate that as well. Yes, Latifa, like I said, indicated, obviously I don't go into detail, any specific or any personal matter, or they definitely have a meaning. When someone does not see the original color, something else, that indicates there's some work that is happening. The purification is taking place, which is a good thing, alhamdulillah, but what's happening is there may be some kind of referring to their individual, improvement, for example. So that's one thing. And then one thing I would say to help you for the next session is, we already in agreement that imagination is a beginning process of spiritual experience. So we've seen a lot worse than you, where they use that as a tool of barrier. I'm not saying anything, it's just my imagination. And we try to explain that, okay, let's just agree with you, it is an imagination, but let's just go through it. Let's follow it. And I want for the next session is, you do not even say, oh, it's just my imagination now. Since we accept it as one of those qualities to experience, then why you sideline yourself by saying it's just an imagination? And already, some of the things that you've explained, due to the blessings of the gathering of pious brothers, like you said, mashallah, ustaz, asatizahs, and especially, it's like a borrowed light from the mashayikh, and maybe it's not our own light as such. You've already said something that indicates it's not imagination anymore. I don't want to say it now, because then you might be thinking too fast ahead. Oh yeah, no, he said it's not imagination, but it is. I can prove that. Something works like that, we know why. So I'm going to let you experience again in the second session, then I'll explain how we know that it might not be imagination only.
The biggest reminding for me was when I was not able to disappear my body.
Right. Okay. Disappearing body is not a purpose as well. Make it easier for you now. Disappearing of the body is not a purpose. If you can do it only at the thought level or imagination level, that's also fine.
Because even when I notice when I try to make my shape clear, still feeling like
Yeah. For you now, disappearance of the body is not important. It's not necessary. In fact, someone who really feels their body's disappeared is actually quite high level. Do you know why? They completely become numb. And sometimes they feel they've fallen asleep. So that experience actually happens at a higher level as well. Here, what we're saying is only at the imagination level for you, inshallah. So that's why I said that's the important thing. Important thing that what happens after, before the lataif stages and after. So don't worry about why am I still feeling pain in my leg? If you don't, then you really left and you have died. Intikal ho gayi, you passed away. You don't want that to happen yet, yeah? So it's good that you feel your legs and so on. And then the family will phone, oh, he went for a retreat, now you send him to the other world. He's not coming back to my house anymore.
There was one confusion when we said La ilaha illallah.
Yeah.
I was confused whether we need to do the way we were told or because our eyes were closed or
No, that's just something extra, just to, like when you do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the light comes and gathering. So sometimes the ustad could do la ilaha illallah, that's just the extras.
because that imagination coming from here.
Mm.
I first one I said I'm in muraqabah, so I should not do it. Still not doing it.
Yeah, no, that la ilaha illallah explained, that's for your purification when you do it individually. When we do in gathering, you can do that if you want to, but it's not a requirement as such. You can do that if you can follow, that's great, because then you're doing a purification before purification. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like in Islam, for example, when you do ghusl, you're purified. But something happens, and sometimes you have to recite wudu. Someone who very logically says, why I've just done a shower now? Why you ask me to wash my feet again and my face again? It's not dirty. I've not gone outside. I've just literally come out of shower. I've just let the wind go. Then why I have to wash my face again? Logical thinking, people are logical thinking like that. But we say no. If you do wudu again, then you become more purified. So this purification has different levels as well. You see, inshallah. Are we all set for the round two?
You can set there, inshallah.
Are you waiting for us to set? No, you can continue with your.
Yeah.
Jazakallah. Okay. Yes, brother. Wa alaikum salam.
So during the lataif cleansing process, I could visualize the colors and
Yeah.
through the process.
Mashallah.
When we got to the top part of the lataif, I felt myself kind of drifting off into random thoughts, see random images, and like I felt like
Nothing is random.
yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah.
I should say it that way. I felt like I was about to doze off into a dream, but then I'd snap back, and then I'd still know what color it was on, so I'd continue.
Yeah.
When we came to the actual transfer, I felt my body becoming quite light,
Yeah.
and just before I did the golden breath, I felt elevated heart rate, so my heart started to beat a lot faster. And then I did the golden breath. Once I did the golden breath, I loved Hazasab straight away. And then when you mentioned that he's with you, I
Yes.
started to see the scene that you were describing.
Yeah.
I remember then walking out in the container and going towards Fez. I remember myself running ahead and visiting the maqam, and then realizing I've left Hazasab. So then picked them next to me, and quite strongly remember holding their hand over and over again. And then I also remember the maqam of Sayyid Abdi's Bagh.
Have you physically been before?
I've been physically
Okay.
once before. This is separate. It was just a wedding that I attended, and I thought I'd go
Right.
see them. And then once the maqam opened and Sayyid Abdi's Bagh came out, you mentioned that they were there. So at that point, I was trying to visualize them, and in my heart, I was saying, "Please let me see you." At which point, I saw an image of a man similar to what you were describing, but looked like a generic Moroccan old man with a shorter beard and a olive tan type of complexion. And then the interesting part was when you said that there's people that are crying. At that moment, I felt like not physically crying, but I could feel myself crying. And then after we came back, I felt myself somewhat vibrating inside. So even during the salah, I felt like I was just
Your physical body
body was vibrating.
Mashallah.
That was it.
Mashallah. I think mashallah is a very good experience that you had, considering that you sat officially for the first time, these retreats and so on. So that's good. Your spirit is already accustomed to or used to some of these things. It's now a matter of learning it properly, like you are doing here, and going through the full proper structurally in a proper manner, so that it gets more used to, your spirit gets more used to, your body gets more used to it, the Lataif cleansing gets more used to it as well. And once you start to understand the meaning behind why we do this cleansing them, then it will make more sense to you as well. And then it has a direct reflection upon your Zahiri purification course. If that's slightly slacking or you are doing, then it should encourage you now to match that. So that it's like symbiotic relationship, like it's matching each other as well. Because if you're doing quite well in the spiritual journey, if that's lagging behind, then that will pull it down as well. So that's an indication through this as well. But when you get more used to your Lataif practices, then it'll become more and more sharper in your experience as well. And like you said, you transfer, which is fine, mashallah, you met the teacher, and as though you felt as you wanted to go by yourself. Sometimes the spirit, once it's been unleashed, like you had done today, then naturally it's like a child. You take him to a toy shop. What happens? He forgets his father. He runs around. I want this, I want this. And he goes, oh, where's my dad? Because he realizes he has to pay for it. So, yeah. So it's like this. The soul for the first time now is experiencing something that always wished for. Because he came from somewhere special as well, remember, amongst the awliya, and especially from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's as though he's been imprisoned, he's caged in this body. And once you release it, he feels that. And as a side reaction, your body was feeling that, the transfer of the spirit. Even when it's returned in Salah, it's like a body had experienced something which never done. So it's like a side reaction that you felt that kind of like shakiness. It's like, for example, when you completely go to sleep, because the ruh really leaves the body, doesn't it? Body can't tell. When you wake up, it takes a good few seconds or few minutes to adjust yourself. When you open your eyes for the first time, you can't really know what's happening. You're looking at your clock, you're trying to make out the time, what it is, or what do I have to do now, what's the first thing comes into your mind. Trying to register everything back to the worldly sense. So, but you've experienced that in Salah now, or before Salah, and in Salah as well. So that shows that, mashallah, the capability what you could do. You should not now, in a more systematically follow through the program and the processes, and you'll be off and running, inshallah. Things have begun in yourself already.
The only one thing I felt which was not concerned, but I just remembered now when you were talking. At one point during the Lataif process, I felt like I could physically just see myself here in the same position,
yeah.
But I got up and tried walking out. And I think I took a couple of steps and I thought, what am I doing? And then I snapped back into the Lataif.
No, that's just basically that's showing the action of your ruh. Like that brother was saying, he was disappointed that he didn't, body was disappeared. In your case, when the spirit transferred, your body thought, oh, I'm going with it as well. And then your conscious self said, no, this is not your journey. You sit quietly. It's the spirit that needs to travel. Because if your body tries to follow that, then it might cause injury as well. You might try to fly and then you hit your head on the ceiling, for example. Yeah, so it happened to an extent already. So because all this is the first time for you, so it's trying to get used to all that concept and all that. Imagine, for example, I 2 years ago went through it. I've never been to anesthetics before. So I thought I could go there, do the job and come out. And then they said, no, you completely, you lose your sense, everything else. And after when I regained senses, I couldn't make out what's going on. And I very, very I was vomiting and can't make out things what's going on. And I really struggled. I thought I was going to be okay, go back to work the same day. So no, it takes 24 hours to recover. So that was my first experience with physical, sedative, which I never put in my body before. Yeah, for you it's happened spiritually for the first time. So all these things will make sense more and more as you practice more, inshallah. Sheikh, are we ready to go? Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah for your time. Just go quickly note the time now. Right, because we kind of had a break and we have a meal. Now we're going to have another meal. So inshallah, about 4 o'clock be ready for the next session, inshallah. So you got half an hour to eat, refresh, and then start to go.